There are cars that get driven, and then there is the machine that arrives and simply rearranges the air around it. And tonight, on Prime Car Culture, we are standing in front of exactly that kind of machine. A snake that America swore it had buried forever, coiled back into existence as the reimagined 2027 Dodge Viper GTS. And if you have ever wondered what it looks like when a legend refuses to stay dead, keep your eyes locked on this screen for the next few minutes, because what you are about to see is not just a car reveal, it is a resurrection captured in steel, carbon fiber, and pure unfiltered American attitude. We begin where every great predator begins, at the mouth, and this front fascia is not asking for attention, it is demanding it. A wide, low, aggressive opening that looks like it was carved specifically to swallow highway air and spit out horsepower. Dark honeycomb mesh, stretching corner to corner, flanked by sharp intake channels that hint at the cooling demands of the monster breathing underneath. And every line here pulls your eye downward and outward, giving the whole front end a stance that feels less like a car and more like something crouched and ready to strike. Moving upward into the eyes of this beast, the headlight assemblies are slim, sharp, almost reptilian, using crisp projector housings wrapped in dark chrome bezels that catch the light and throw it back like a warning. The kind of lighting signature that looks intimidating parked in a driveway and absolutely lethal in a rearview mirror at night. Angular yet precise. A clear departure from the rounded, almost innocent headlights of Viper's past. Replaced now with something that looks engineered in a wind tunnel rather than sketched on paper. And just beneath that main beam, a thin ribbon of daytime running light traces the edge of the fender, glowing with a crisp, clean white signature that switches on like a heartbeat the moment you approach the car. A subtle but unmistakable identity marker that lets every other driver on the road know exactly what just pulled up beside them. Minimalist in design, yet impossible to ignore once it is lit, giving this Viper a face that feels both futuristic and unmistakably rooted in muscle car heritage. Let your eyes drop down to the wheels for a moment, because this is where raw performance intent becomes visible. Multi-spoke forged alloys finished in a deep gunmetal tone, each spoke sculpted not just for looks, but to pull heat away from massive performance brakes glowing red just behind them, wrapped in low-profile rubber that looks stretched tight over the rim, like skin over muscle. And when these wheels start to turn, even standing still in this shot, you can almost hear the tire compound whispering promises of grip through a corner. The door handle is next, and on a car like this, even something as small as a handle becomes a design statement. A flush, minimal piece that sits nearly invisible against the bodywork until your hand reaches for it, blending aerodynamic discipline with a tactile, satisfying click that feels more like unlocking a cockpit than opening a car door. Understated compared to the aggression surrounding it, but intentional, because everything on this car earns its place. The side mirrors continue that same philosophy, aerodynamically sculpted, mounted low and wide on slender stalks, finished in gloss black or exposed carbon depending on trim, each one shaped like a small wing rather than a simple reflective box, cutting drag, while still commanding a presence of their own. A small but telling detail that shows this Viper was designed by people obsessed with every square inch of surface area. Walk around to the rear now, because this is where the drama peaks. Taillights stretched wide across the tail in a thin, glowing red bar that channels the original Viper's signature circular lamps into a modern sequential light strip, illuminating with a slow, deliberate sweep that feels theatrical every single time you unlock the car after dark, bold, wide, and unmistakably American in its refusal to be subtle. Right below that fiery strip, the exhaust exits in a quad configuration, thick, dark-tipped pipes nestled into a sculpted rear diffuser, and even in complete silence, you can look at the size of these outlets and understand instantly that whatever engine feeds them is not interested in whispering. It is built to roar, built to rattle windows on quiet residential streets and announce its presence 3 blocks before you ever see it turn the corner. Just above those pipes and centered on the rear fascia sits the brand emblem, a badge that carries decades of motorsport heritage in a few simple letters, polished, deliberate, and placed with the kind of confidence that only comes from a nameplate that has genuinely earned its legendary status. A small detail that somehow manages to feel like the exclamation point on everything the exterior design has been building toward. Now, step inside, because the drama does not stop at the door sill. It simply changes register, from loud and aggressive to focused and immersive. The cabin wrapping around you like a cockpit rather than a passenger compartment. Dark surfaces, driver-focused architecture, and a layout that makes it immediately clear this car was built around the person behind the wheel first, and everyone else second. The dashboard stretches low and wide in front of you, a sculpted, symmetrical design finished in soft touch materials and contrast stitching, angled subtly toward the driver, with clean horizontal lines that keep the eye moving naturally toward the road ahead, rather than getting lost in clutter. A modern take on the purposeful, no-nonsense dashboards that defined earlier generations of this nameplate. The steering wheel sits front and center in this experience. A flat-bottom, thick-rimmed unit wrapped in grippy leather with contrast stitching running along its edges. Integrated paddle shifters positioned perfectly behind it, and just enough button clusters to control the essentials without turning the wheel into a cluttered command center. Everything about its shape screaming that this is a wheel meant to be gripped hard through a corner, not casually rested on during a commute. Peer through that wheel and the digital instrument cluster comes alive. A crisp, high-resolution display capable of shifting its entire layout depending on drive mode. A track-focused view that pushes the tachometer front and center in bold red numerals. And a more relaxed everyday layout that prioritizes navigation and trip data. Technology married seamlessly with the analog spirit this car has always represented. To the right of that, a floating infotainment screen rises from the center stack, angled toward the driver, running a clean modern interface for navigation, media, and vehicle performance data, complete with a dedicated telemetry mode that lets you review lap times, acceleration curves, and cornering G-forces after a spirited run. A genuinely track-ready piece of technology wrapped in a genuinely premium interface. Just below it, the center console continues the performance theme, finished in brushed aluminum and carbon accents, housing drive mode selectors, launch control activation, and climate controls that stay physical and tactile, rather than being buried inside a touchscreen menu. A deliberate choice that keeps the driver's attention where it belongs, on the road. Rising from that console is the gear shifter itself, short throw, metal knobbed, positioned perfectly within reach. And even in the automated version of this car, the shifter is designed with a mechanical, purposeful feel, a physical reminder that this is still a car built for engaged, hands-on driving rather than passive cruising. The front seats wrap around you like a second skin, deeply bolstered racing-inspired buckets finished in a mix of leather and Alcantara, with prominent stitching patterns that mirror the exterior's aggressive lines, offering the kind of lateral support that becomes immediately appreciated the moment you carry real speed into a corner. Comfortable enough for a long highway run, yet aggressive enough to hold you firmly in place during a track day. As the sun goes down and the cabin lighting activates, the entire mood of this interior transforms. Soft ambient lighting traces the door panels, dashboard edges, and footwells in a customizable glow, casting the cabin in a moody, premium atmosphere that turns every night drive into something cinematic, subtle enough not to distract, yet immersive enough to remind you constantly that you are sitting inside something special. The door panels themselves carry that same premium language forward, wrapped in stitched leather panels, contrast piping, and soft-touch inserts, blending performance with genuine luxury in a way that earlier, more Spartan Vipers never even attempted. Every seam and stitch clearly placed with intention, rather than mass production convenience. And now, because a car like this simply demands it, let's talk about what's actually making all of this possible. Popping the hood to reveal an engine bay that looks less like an assembly line product and more like a hand-built work of mechanical art. Wiring loomed neatly, strut brace polished to a mirror finish, and every visible component arranged with the kind of obsessive presentation usually reserved for concept cars, rather than production vehicles. Front and center in that bay sits the power plant itself, a massive naturally aspirated engine wearing prominent Viper branding across its intake, velocity stacks, or a sculpted intake manifold dominating the visual real estate. And just looking at its sheer physical size gives you an instant, visceral understanding of why this nameplate has always been treated with a kind of reverence usually reserved for exotic supercars rather than domestic muscle. Raw displacement paired with modern engineering, built to deliver the kind of brutal, linear power delivery that made the original Viper a legend in the first place. Underneath that dramatic bodywork, the chassis has been tightened and reinforced to handle everything that power can throw at it. A wider track, a lower center of gravity, and suspension geometry tuned to reward a driver who wants to feel the road rather than float above it. Adaptive dampers stiffening instantly the moment the drive mode selector clicks over into track, turning the ride from a composed cruiser into a purpose-built weapon. Massive multi-piston brake calipers, grip drilled and vented rotors at every corner, painted in a bold accent color visible through the spokes of those forged wheels, a promise that stopping power got just as much attention as straight-line speed. Slide back out for one final look, and notice how the character lines running down the fenders are not decoration. They channel air toward the intercoolers and brakes, a philosophy where form and function are never separated. Proof this is a car built by engineers who happen to also be artists. This is what happens when a company stops chasing trends and simply decides to build the car enthusiasts have been begging for. A machine unapologetic in its design, uncompromising in its performance, and unmistakable the moment it rolls into view. The 2027 Dodge Viper GTS, a reimagined American icon that proves some legends never actually die. They just wait patiently for the right moment to come roaring back. If this snake got your pulse up even slightly while watching, imagine what it does from behind the wheel with the throttle pinned and that naturally aspirated engine screaming toward red line. So make sure you are subscribed right here on Prime Car Culture. Drop a comment telling us which shot hit hardest, and stick around because we bring you the most detailed, immersive looks at the world's most incredible machines every week, and you do not want to miss what's next.